Welcome everybody to the Women of Streamline takeover of Video Games Real Talk. Our women are rising up, speaking up, and we're taking over this channel for a very special episode. So I'm going to be the host for today. I'm Layla Amir. I am the head of marketing for Streamline, and I've grown up with the company for across the last 5 years. And joining us today, we have a broad spectrum of leaders from Streamline. So hello, ladies.
Hello.
So we're going to go around and do some introductions. So Rai, I'm going to jump to you first.
Hi, thank you, Layla. So, hello everyone. I'm Rai Sewgobind. I'm Business Development Manager at Streamline. And I've been doing cold emailing, maintaining relationships for about 3 years now. A little fun fact about me is that I'm born and raised in the Netherlands. I'm Dutch, but my parents are from Suriname. So I have the Caribbean spirit flowing through me. And I guess you want to know how I got into video games?
Yeah, it would be great to hear a little bit about your background and what brought you to where you are today.
Talking about video games? Do you have hours? No, just kidding. To give you the short version, I grew up with so many different video games. There were so many different types of video games. Like you had like beat 'em up video games. You had your side scrolling video games, the puzzle video games, and when being so young, it's really all about just how fun it is. That's all you see. And either I'm playing alone or with my cousins, all cramped up in a room, passing the controller to the next one when you failed or you lost the game. And I guess at some point when I got older, I was starting to look at video games differently because now it wasn't just fun, but you started to get fascinated by it. So it either was fascinating or frustrating. That's that kind of what happened. But the part that was so fascinating, that kind of remained in there and eventually became my passion. So I started to understand that there were so many different elements that were being brought together to deliver that experience. And I guess that's pretty much the passion that I'm chasing now.
Very nice. I'm going to jump to Yea Ji.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yea Ji. I'm the general manager running the brand called Old Pixels, which is a brand under Streamline Media Group umbrella. We work with partners globally to support a 3D pipeline of the game development journey. A little bit of myself. I'm originally from Korea. I moved to Malaysia when I was 9 because I wanted to study languages. It was my childhood dream, to be working in the United Nations as an interpreter, translator. So that's how I came all the way over to Malaysia myself. Kudos to my mom letting me when I was 9. But in university, as my degree, I studied biomedical sciences. So I'm a complete opposite of what Rai just described. I had very little experience playing video games growing up. It wasn't really my thing. My family was very much into like books and studies. It was very far away from video games. So a lot of my friends who knew me for a very long time are very surprised when they see me working in this industry. How I came into it was sort of a coincidence. I had a high school friend, who was working in Streamline as a concept artist, and I so happened to be back in Malaysia for a holiday, and she said they're looking for a Korean translator who's in a video game company called Streamline. So I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Could be like a nice part-time job. So I came, talked to the family here at Streamline, got to know them, and somehow I'm still here after 5 years running a brand. So talk about craziness of video games.
Yeah, that's true. It's super crazy. And I think we're going to hear another story that's maybe not very typical from the video games industry as we join Anais.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, my name is Anais Jansen-Fernandez. I represent Streamline as the head of legal. So yeah, I am actually on the other spectrum. I didn't grow up playing games. I did play one game, which was Mortal Kombat. My cousins had that game, and I loved it. Whenever I visited, I did play with them, and I really liked it. But that was a very different life. I grew up playing outside. I grew up in Venezuela, where it's hot, and when it rains, you play outside in the rain. You run, you do sports, you're more active. And in my house, there was only a TV with 3 channels. So there was nothing much going on inside. So not games at all. And I think the question for me is, how did I get into the games industry more than into games, right? Well, the games industry, that was an incidental thing. So let me just rewind. I was born Venezuelan. I was in Venezuela till I was 14. Then I moved to the Netherlands. And so in the Netherlands, I went to school. I finished my secondary education, went to university. And so I became a lawyer, and I was working for a firm where I met Alexander. And so Streamline was one of my accounts, and I was working on corporate affairs. Well, fun fact is that I got married to Alexander, and so I couldn't work anymore for Streamline, representing Streamline with the firm. But I moved with Alexander to New York, and he offered me a job. He's like, well, why don't you just work with us and finish the work that you were doing with the firm? So I didn't intend to stay at first. I thought, okay, why not? Let me just get this job and then see what happens. So in New York, we set up an office. We had a team. I ended up with Streamline doing a million things, not just corporate law. So I finished that part. And then after New York, we moved to Vegas with a team. And here in Vegas, I did even immigration work. I got that from negotiating contracts, services contracts for the company, and learning everything on the fly. And then I moved to Malaysia with a team. And in Malaysia, I had to help with the entire operations. So we were 3 guys and me running the office all together. So I handled human resources to, contracts at the office, from insurance to employment agreements to, disciplinary measures. So I had to do quite a lot with Streamline. It wasn't just games. And along the way with all this, I learned how the company actually worked. And being back in Kuala Lumpur, I was able to see everybody's work. So I could all the time walk to someone and say, so explain to me, what is it exactly that you do, so that I understand. And with that, I was able to, immerse myself into a new ecosystem and understand everything. And so, yeah, that's my path in the games industry. It was first an incidental thing, but I stayed. I fell in love with it, and I wasn't directly exposed to video games, but I was working for a video games company that needs more than support in the development in video games. So this is my story.
Thank you, Anais. It's really great to hear. I mean, between us all, we've had quite a few years with Streamline and in various different capacities. So I think it's going to be a very well-rounded conversation here.
5 years seems the magical number for everybody here. I lived 5 years in Malaysia. Rai, you lived 5 years in Malaysia too. And
Close to,
Yea Ji, you've been 5 years in Malaysia at Streamline.
Streamline, yeah.
Working out of Malaysia. And Layla, you've been working with Streamline for 5 years. So this is
our
like a magical number.
So as Anais rightly said, I've been with the company for 5 years. I'm head of marketing now, but that's not where I came from. I was in the CEO office for a little bit, and then I was on the biz dev team too. I started also not very in traditional games route, I think. In Malaysia, I actually worked in magazine publishing and also for the British government, as you do. And then before that in the UK, which is where I'm based and where I'm from, I was working in film and TV, both as an actress and behind the camera too. So that's probably the most seamless connection to the video games in the entertainment side of it, for sure, and the creative bit. But otherwise, yeah, video games for me were something I played religiously in the 90s, things I would fight with my younger brother about. The Game Boy was mine. When he was born, it meant that he got it next, and I was really upset about that. But I would play real, like, classic games. I was a Tetris and a Super Mario kid. That was for me. But then also it was a time when we couldn't afford a console. So we didn't have anything in the house apart from a Game Boy. But video shops, do you remember them? Video rental stores existed.
Yeah,
So there was one at the bottom of my street. And so at the weekend, like, our treat was we could go and rent a console. So we'd rent a Nintendo, or you could rent a PlayStation and then a couple of games for the weekend, and then you'd have to go give it back. So that's what we used to do, how we used to spend our time on the weekends. But it was great because you got to play all the games that, you know, if you didn't tell your parents what they were, you'd play all the shoot 'em ups. I vividly remember GoldenEye. That's the one that sticks out in my head the most, because you could, because I wasn't very good, you could inflate the size of their heads of all the people that you were shooting, so it's a bigger target. So that's what I used to do. And otherwise, things like Rayman, platform games were absolutely up my street. I still play Rayman on the Nintendo Switch now because it's still beautiful. So they were the kind of things I played. So yeah, but moving into the video games industry was just sort of happenstance that I was looking for a job in Malaysia because I wanted to stay in Malaysia. But yeah, I joined 5 years ago and I'm still here and hoping to stick around and continue all the cool work we do. So yeah, that's me. That's all our lovely ladies that we have here. I'm going to also raise that I'm very pleased about all the diverse backgrounds we have here. I think you've heard that. So I'm from the UK. I'm also half Persian. We've got Venezuela, we've got Suriname, the Netherlands, South Korea, and then our studio is in Malaysia. So I think we're doing pretty well in terms of representation. And Anais is based in the USA as well. So we're almost got every continent going on. So
My childhood dream of UN is happening here right now.
So we actually have to talk about video games now, like for real, in the real talk. That's what the podcast is for. We are going to focus on 3 things. We're going to talk about bias, discrimination, and stereotypes. These kind of all sound like they might be the same, but I think we're going to delve a little bit deeper to see what we're seeing and how they can all be interpreted differently. So I'm going to jump in first with stereotypes. So this can be, in the video games industry, anything from women being called booth babes, or in game they can be seen as just cannon fodder, non-playable characters, sidelines, certain stereotypes that have been cultivated in the games industry. Some are negative, derogatory, or even condescending. So Yea Ji, I'm going to jump to you. You've obviously been on the show floor because you're representing your brands, either for business development or as a speaker at events. And obviously you run 2 video game services at Streamline with All Pixels and Day Zero. So I want to ask, how have you experienced stereotyping of your role and your position?
Shows are always very interesting. My favorite parts are always the meetings because you get to really meet people and talk to them, have conversations, and they usually take, very casual forms. It's a catch up with long due partners as well that we haven't met in a while. But the meetings with new people, they're always very interesting because they could go in a very different direction depending on, who you're talking to. But stereotypes usually show up a lot during meetings as well. And these are very subtle things that I have, I think, grown numb to over time. So I had like talking about this topic, I had to really think like what word, like, what stereotypes were there? Because, over time you grow so used to it to a point where uh, I have to make a conscious effort to like recognize them myself and correct them on the spot. I think one of the most common things is, let's say I'm representing a brand, so I usually lead presentations or talks. Um, Sometimes my colleagues join me, sometimes my male colleagues join me in the table, in the conversations, in the meeting. And even though I'm the one who is leading the conversation, talking through the PowerPoint, going through the whole talk, um, even though I'm leading the conversations, and usually the questions, or when I answer questions, or when I ask questions, I often catch them not looking at me, but looking at my male colleagues and answering them instead. So it's very strange and it's very subtle as well. But it takes a while for you to notice, and it takes a while for them to notice as well. And you have to just push through and divert the attention back to yourself as you're answering their questions or going through the presentation. So things like that. Or sometimes as you have meetings with, Alexander, the CEO, I think automatically sometimes they assume that I'm his executive assistant. Yes, so I get a lot of requests for coffee as well. And my advice, honestly, is yes, yes. Everyone's shaking their heads in disbelief, but yes, it does happen. And my advice is to kind of let your male colleagues that you're traveling with or you're going around with, and just be upfront with them and let them know that these are the things that you're going through. And most of the times, they're able to become your allies by just you mentioning these things. So, for example, something that Alexander sometimes does to support me in this is if someone asks for coffee, he gets up and gets the coffee himself, letting me continue the conversation or lead the meeting. So it's the small gestures like this that really conveys and communicates to the person that this is the person you should be looking at, this is the person you should be listening to and paying attention to. So it's those little signals that really helps if your colleagues are able to be there for you to support you in those kind of situations.
And Yea Ji, do you think something that is ringing true in my ear is that even though you're getting the support of your male colleagues and referencing them as allies, it's still that they are the person that has to sort of validate you in that room to the other people. So Alex, for example, if he's stepping up and getting coffee, it's like they'll only accept that you are the person they should be speaking to if he approves of it. Yeah, please carry on, because obviously you're from a position where you've risen in the ranks through Streamline. So it's really important to hear how that's affected you, and also as a leader, going from like, how does that work in your team as well, being the female lead?
I think age plays a huge factor in that too. I am obviously a very young leader in the organization. A lot of the people that report to me are often, and most of the times, younger than myself. But I was pleasantly surprised internally at people's willingness to accept me for their leader at the start. Of course, there were supports from the company at the start with HR having those meetings, get together to introduce me as their leaders, and sessions to get to know each other. Talk about my leadership styles, management styles, where I want to take the brand, opportunities to talk about vision and mission. I think that really helped people recognize me as, okay, she's leading this brand, she has visions for it, this is her strategy, let's go. So again, those kind of supports really did help in the process of also because I started off in the same company, in the same team as someone in a more junior ranks as a junior project manager. So having gone from, project manager, production, translator to leading a brand, that was a huge step that I had to take. But people who are working around me were very open to the idea, and they've been very accepting of providing feedback and also just letting me know if things could be improved, if they're enjoying the process, if there's anything unclear about the vision and mission of where I want to take this company to.
So, Rai, I'm going to jump over to you with the same question, because again, we're all coming from this from different perspectives, and you also started with your publication Eye for Games, and that's entering the industry in a very different way. How did you feel stereotypes affected your work, if at all?
Yes, that's true. That's the bit that I left out from my introduction. But yes, I did started with the publication Eye for Games, and I mean it's basically accepted as it's media, it's journalism. Most of the people who want to enter the video games or want to be as close as to developing games, they would then either start with QA or go into media to talk about games, to have their reviews. But I wouldn't say I've experienced something really extreme. Of course, there's this fine line that's between that you're being stereotyped versus that you're just professionally unfit. You don't have enough knowledge despite of your gender, and that they want to challenge you on that. I think it leans more towards that, because getting into interviews with people, trying to get them to talk to us, to tell us a bit about, say, how they actually made or worked on the game. I mean, yeah, I went to Gamescom, had a camera with me, interviewed the artists and designers, but it just, I guess it kind of leans towards what Yea Ji's saying. It's also a part of having the experience and make sure that whatever is being told to you, whatever is being said, I mean, you're following your passion, you're following what you want to do. And I think nothing should be against that, nothing should stand against that. And if that has to do with your gender, then I would say move aside. We can still get our thing done. But yeah, I haven't really experienced something extreme, or that I would really say, okay, because of my gender, that and that wasn't possible. But I do have a little funny story about the bias kind of thing. Like the moment you're, well, to rewind a bit about that. So young, maybe 15 years old or something, playing a game, and I finally decided to have a headset so you could hear me. Because in my mind, I need to play co-op, I need to communicate to you. So you defend the flag or you go capture the flag, I have to communicate. We're playing together. And in this team versus team match, I started to say something because I got a bit frustrated because the team member wasn't doing his job. And the moment I spoke up, the first best reaction that I got to it was a question. It was, "Are you a very young boy or a girl?" So I joked about it. I said, "Hey, I'm the very young kid. I'm the very young boy." But he eventually did discover that I was a girl. And what happens is that, I mean, it's rare. It was way back then. It's rare. You're playing on a console, more rare. You're playing a first-person shooter, even more rare. And you're playing good, well, also a bit rare. But it's it's when and from that moment he discovered it. And what happens is that you kind of get a special treatment. I didn't ask for it. It's unwanted, but he suddenly always, hey, invite to play. And hey, if you got killed, he became suddenly this white knight saying, "Who killed her in the game?" and things like that. But it's it's like, okay, dude, chill down. I can manage myself in the game. Just because you discovered I'm a girl doesn't change anything. And I guess that was also the time where girl gamer became a thing. That's when the phase started, when they started to discover more female gamers playing. And suddenly we were girl gamers. And I never really understood that label because what we were seeing were two very opposite sides. The girl gamer was labeled, and there are female gamers who totally took advantage of that, versus the female gamers who got totally offended by that. So you still can't say that it was a whole offending label to all female gamers. So yeah, that's kind of what I experienced from the consumer side. But I guess the same thing with Yea Ji is let's say the position that I have right now. Yes, I have a slightly higher chance that some partners don't want to take me seriously, or they don't want to talk to me at all. Maybe they are in their minds like, oh, I'd rather talk to like my male colleague. But to me, in my mind, if that is the let's say the client I'm talking to, and I'm noticing that, I mean, I'm not going to do any tricks just to get the deal with you. And if that is the case, then you're basically not, I mean, that's not the type of partnership I would want for my company, any companies, and let alone for the rest of my team. So, of course, people will ask me, okay, what do you do about that? Then, I mean, it happened, right? You would say something about it. But in my case, it depends. It depends because in the end, you've already showed me who you are, and you're not worth my time. That's it. Yeah.
Rai's too badass for this conversation, man.
Edit out everything.
Like, super Dutch about it. Super just like, you don't like it, there's a door, this is how I roll, which is exactly what all of us want to be. So I'm super glad that we have someone who has that embodied in them, representing us here today. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to jump to you, Anais, on something that's actually come up in both what Yea Ji and Rai said, in that gender seems to equate to your seniority at a company. People are always looking at you and thinking that you're lower than the status that you actually have. Obviously, you're head of legal, and you did say at the beginning, as you were learning and training, you needed Alexander in the room to help you with certain negotiations. And obviously, at some point, you overtook that, and you are the authority in the room. So how did that shift happen, and what did you notice when it did?
So it took me a while. I think it was a very organic process, learning how to translate the work we do into legal terms and how to represent the company in that way. I don't recall when was the moment that I was able to do our contracts by myself. It just happened organically. But authority in the room, maybe I'm just like Yea Ji. Maybe I have a hard time acknowledging or recognizing when discrimination or condescending behavior is happening. No idea. I just have my script. These are the sticking points that I want to negotiate, and then that's it. And to me, it doesn't matter who I have on the other side. I guess I never felt that there was some type of discrimination or condescending behavior. Not in my career working out of Kuala Lumpur. But last year, I moved in 2020. I moved to Las Vegas, where I'm working out of my house. And we had a client where there were a lot of sticking points. And I thought, why don't we just get on a phone call and discuss the agreement so that you understand where I'm coming from and maybe we can find a compromise. So we had a call, and I wanted to walk through all the sticking points. And at every sticking point, counsel had a very firm, serious face and disagreeing with everything. And the argument was, company policy won't accept this, and company policy won't accept this. And at some point, I'm like, so you've come here to tell me that company policy won't accept this. So what exactly are we doing here? And then the answer was, if you don't agree, you can decide not to work with us. And so my answer was, well, no, that's not what we're here for. We're here to find a resolution. At that moment in time, I couldn't tag exactly the type of behavior that was going on. But when we got off the phone, we talked with the business development person, and well, it was recognized that there was some type of maybe discrimination going on, or I don't know. I mean, like I said, I had a hard time recognizing these patterns. But of course, I'm new here to the U.S., and I have in my entire life path, I've not experienced discrimination. Although I am not white. I am what they call here Afro-Latina. I have never faced discrimination, so I don't recognize it. But then the conversation was like, yeah, this was discrimination. I'm like, oh, well, really? So yeah, that's the experience. And just let me rewind on my life path. So I was born in Venezuela. It is a very diverse culture. You have many colors. Anything is possible in Venezuela. But Venezuelans, they have a little bit of a preference when it comes to skin color. The lighter you are, the lighter your skin color is, the better. That's the perception. And that is an ugly truth. In my social circle, that didn't play a role. Then I moved to Holland, where I was in a small city. I was not in Amsterdam. Amsterdam is more international. I grew up in Haarlem, and I went to school in a little town called Driehuis. And I was probably the fourth kid in that school that had a different skin color. But that was not a disadvantage. That was quite the opposite. I guess people were curious about me.
No, thank you for sharing. I mean, I think all of these things are really important for us to talk about because, we're all from very different backgrounds. Just like men, just like everybody else who exists in this world, we're all very unique, and we have our own backstories. So I think some of our conversation is going to steer not necessarily towards the bias, stereotype, or discrimination we've received as women, but in other, just as who we are as human beings because of our background, because it all makes us who we are. So one thing that you guys mentioned is either growing numb to things or not recognizing it, and it doesn't have to be major for it to be a conversation starter for us to and other people to know that it needs to change. I think from my side on that, I'm in a fairly unique-ish position because I'm mixed. As I say, I'm half Persian, half English. But you'd never know that to look at me. I'm white. I'm just very white. I'm very typical. I just have dark hair is the only thing that would potentially put me as being something else. So I've never experienced that kind of discrimination to my face, at least. But something I have noticed is my name on a piece of paper is very different because I have a very Iranian name. And something I did notice is coming back from Malaysia to work in the UK. I'd come from a very prestigious job and I had great credentials. And when I got to the UK, everyone was, oh, you're going to be a shoo-in. Everywhere is going to want you for a job, blah, 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 which is nice to hear. But I also had a reality check very quickly because I had one interview in 3 months. And this wasn't in a recession time. It was, normal, no pandemic, no dramas, just normal life. And it made me realize the only thing on that piece of paper that could turn somebody off is my very foreign name and the fact that I've been out of the country for however many years. I think it was 3 or 4 years. It was like, they think I'm not British or I'm not English, and this seems like that was the problem for them, because in terms of like the job criteria, I could do all of it. So the only thing I kept coming up against was like, so should I shorten my name? Which I do, actually, mostly because it's really long. So it's a pain in the ass to write. I even started thinking, do I have to put my nationality on your CV, which I think is totally wrong. You should never, ever, ever do that. So all of our different ethnicities and being a woman, we're kind of down the list in the pecking order of how the people that run the world view us. So it makes a difference in our working lives and in our social lives. And yes, so jumping into all of the topics that we've discussed today, speaking from your female perspective, so putting our other things aside, what do you think we can do in the workplace in particular to counter these discriminations, bias, or stereotypes that we see? And not necessarily what we can do, because it's not always down to us. What can our colleagues do to help us?
I mean, there's many things on all levels that everyone can do. Speaking from a manager's point of view, I think hiring takes a very important role when it comes to creating an environment that everyone feels like they belong, and not only belong, but have a voice. And not only have a voice, but have that voice be heard. I'd like to go back to numbers. I recently had this discovery with Layla as well, as we're putting together the facts and data for the Women's History Month data. We're looking at our demographics internally in the studio, and I've always thought, Streamline, we're doing very good. I'm sure we have a lot of women in the studio. I'm sure it's close to half and half, because we have a lot of women leaders and in the managerial positions. And we looked at the stats, and it was 35% overall women compared to in the studio, and that was pretty shocking to me, because to me it felt like we were well balanced. But when we looked at the numbers, it showed that we could still improve. So I think a lot of companies do need to take a very objective approach when it comes to assessing your workplace environments. To certain people, like we said, it's very hard to recognize these things, obviously, because we all have our own privileges, and we have very good colleagues and very open environments where we can openly be ourselves without feeling like we're being discriminated. But there is power to number, and I think that's very important for companies to assess, analyze, and decide where do we need to consciously put in our efforts to be better at. It could be a gender, it could be a race, it could be backgrounds, educational backgrounds, and make conscious efforts during hiring. And also when you're going out, for example, for recruitment runs, or going out to schools for talks and training to recruit and bring up talents to be part of this industry. That's where you could, for example, bring in certain leaders of your company that are women, or that are from particular nationality or backgrounds, to have them at the front, so that other people of the same gender or same minority groups look at them and be inspired and are encouraged to join the industry. And I think starting from the bottom, it's a long-term thing. It's not going to change over time. It's just because you took one woman to a recruitment show is not going to immediately change your demographics in your studio. But it's about starting from the bottom up, gradually making changes in the organization.
Great examples. Rai and Anais, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I do. Yea Ji, that's actually a very good example. Every little helps. And I think another thing that we can think of is the mission, having a mission in a company like what we have at Streamline is give creators a way of life. That's our mission. And a mission is, if you go back, well, think about it. Why are we here? Why do we exist? This is why we exist, to give that opportunity, that platform to anyone who is a creator, an opportunity to be creative and also earn a living. And I think this is very important because it is a common ground that you're allowing people to have in which nothing else matters as long as there is creativity involved in whatever way, whether you are a genius at drafting agreements, or you're an engineer, or you're a game designer, or you're very good at selling video games. It doesn't matter. That unites you, whether you're young, old, middle aged, seasoned, not experienced, whether you're from the UK, the US, Holland, or Korea. It doesn't matter. It's that common ground that unites you, and I think that is key to preventing discrimination. You need to find that uniqueness. You need acknowledge that everybody is unique, like I said to my daughter, but also find that common ground. And that common ground you will find if you have a well-defined mission in your company.
Very well said.
Mhm.
Right. Do we have anything to add there?
Yes. And I might be
Yes.
very Dutch again.
Oh, go.
But
Do it. That's what we want.
no. Yes, definitely. Both what Yea Ji said and Anais said, totally true, because it all comes together into, we want recognition. We want recognition. We also study. We do our best. We follow, just like everybody else, right? And it doesn't matter exactly where you're from, your skin color, I mean, your accent. It's you can perform, and that adds value to the company instead of just adding gender vying for the sake of adding it, right? And here's my very Dutch opinion about it. It's that, to be honest, you just don't fight something that isn't worth it. That doesn't say anything about you. You just have to discover that as soon as possible. And that doesn't mean that you are not fighting for your rights or you drop your beliefs. It's definitely nothing like that. But you're mindful to those who do support you. What I do is that I just surround myself with people who want to see me grow, who want to see me becoming successful. And I do the same for others. So why don't we do that more often?
Yeah, I think you're right. And going back to the what you're talking about in the numbers, for people who are jumping on the diversity and inclusion is now also becoming trite words for all industries, because it's a very polite way of saying I don't have enough women, I don't have enough ethnic minorities in my workplace. And the reality is it should be called what it is. And it's like you've hired a bunch of people that look like you because it makes you comfortable. And there's a word, I think for me, I think that it should just be called representation. Yours, wherever your office is, it should represent what the world looks like when you open your front door. And not just because you're ticking boxes that a census says that you should, but that they have to recognize that having a real life representation in your workplace means that you get those values and experiences that you can't get from a bunch of people who are all the same. And that's the thing I wish people would cling to, rather than I just need to tick some numbers.
Yes, you actually said something that reminded me on something else. A part of it, because this whole thing about, oh, there are no women in the video games industry. There are plenty. It's just that we don't jump to the next best spotlight that we get. We're not. We're just we like where we work. We're having fun. We can work on our passion. And that's the thing, and that's why I think we also have to recognize that you have also women who don't need to be put in the spotlight. They're supporting each other in their own ways, right? And it, I guess it might just be a bit too hard looking for them. And if you are not part of the industry, you might not see them at all. It's kind of what we say that, hey, if you're not looking for it, so you won't find it. But look for it, talk to these companies, go around, have this studio visit, and you'll see them. And I think that's also a part that we've started to notice. That was this little phase as well, where again with the whole girl gamer and things like that, it's platforms where they started to show themselves more, or you have platforms where they are becoming speakers, things like that. It's the chance that they get, the chance that is available for them to do that as well. And we basically have to reach a point that we don't need to tell the audience anymore. We want very diverse keynotes somewhere there at the bottom. That's where we should be working towards to.
I'm going to jump to our final question. I've jumped there. I'm already there. It's hopefully going to tie everything in. That's the aim anyway. So Streamline's turning 20 this year, which means we've been running for 20 years. So yeah, given what we've spoken about today, what advice would you give your 20-year-old selves?
Okay, I'll go first. Well, I'm 38, so it's 18 years ago. What would I tell myself? I think you need to have goals in your life. You need to have a purpose, something to wake up for. You can't just exist. You wake up and you think, this is what I have in mind. This is what I want to pursue. And I think go after that. And of course, along the way, you're going to have a lot of hiccups. And I think overcoming those hiccups is important. You can't let people tell you that you can't do something. Don't let that stop you. Break that wall. You make a way yourself. You got to do that. Even if people tell you you're not going to be able to. That, yes, there's going to be hiccups along the way. And you got to, stick to your purpose. And even if your purpose is not a fit because your qualities don't match, it doesn't matter. Then find an alternative. Find another way that fits your intelligence, that fits your qualities, even if it was not your initial interest. So that's my I think that's my advice to myself. And to connect it to this the conversation that we've been having today, I don't think gender or race or age should play a role in anything. You should just be yourself and do what you want to do and go after your passion. But of course, one more thing, and I think that I was so focused on performing, being, doing my best because I needed to show my parents that I was a smart kid that they signed up for. I was very disciplined. And I think looking back, I think I would tell myself, don't forget to smell the flowers sometimes. It's not just, hard work.
Rai, I'll go to you next and then we'll move to Yea Ji after.
Anais pretty much said it. She said it all. I had one line. I had just one liner that exactly says, just trust your passion, trust your gut feeling, all will be fine. Because exactly, the hiccups will be there. And to be honest, there are a lot of things that happened on the way that also shaped me the way I am today. So, as bad as some of those moments were, I learned from it. But it doesn't have to do anything with that I accepted it then or anything like that. It's not like that. But yeah, exactly as Anais said, don't forget to have a little bit of fun. Maybe play 1 more hour of that video game, right? Yeah, you totally do it because before you know it, you go to bed, you wake up as an adult. That's yes.
Oh, I feel that one. Yea Ji.
That's funny. I mean, Anais and Rai pretty much said it. I mean, I grew up very disciplined as well. My parents were they made very clear that once I started something, I had to finish. Like, never give up was a thing, which, helped me become very resilient and, very flexible with the environment and, whatever comes my way. But it also became a double-edged sword that because it wasn't really directed at myself, right, or for my own, well, making decisions for myself, like not giving up because I believe not giving up is the right way, and not just for the sake of proving it to the others that I don't give up, proving to the others that I am a resilient person and I can succeed. If I could meet myself in my 20s and tell her, I would probably say it's okay to give up if you feel that's not the right way. It doesn't reflect who you are as a person. What you're currently doing right now, your current job, your current studies, doesn't define who you are. But like Rai said, it becomes a part of you. It shapes who you are becoming. And just enjoy this discovery as you're getting to learn more about yourself, what your needs are, what makes you happy, what your values are, what you find important. And yeah, like know when to give up if it's for yourself. Because I realized I was doing a lot of things. I chose a path of study called biomedical sciences because I thought it was cool. I ended up like, well, this is not something I want to do for the rest of my life. But at that point, I've already sunk in, the sunken cost fallacy. I've already spent 2 years and I just had one more year to finish that course. But, every day was no joy. I was waking up dreading going into classes, going to modules, because I knew deep in my side that it wasn't the right path for me, but I didn't have the courage to turn it around until, I came back on a holiday in Malaysia and randomly met my friend who needed a Korean translator, and I came across these guys at Streamline. So that moment was pretty much a life changer, and it really made me think again about, who I'm living for. And I think that's one important lesson I would probably tell myself back in the 20s. Although it wouldn't really be fun if I, told her all the answers and she didn't get to do it and learn it herself.
It's so true, so true. And funny that you said, so I just latching onto your going on holiday in Malaysia, then ended up sort of changing your career path. And that's exactly what happened to me. I'd never even barely heard of Malaysia before, but then went on holiday and then I didn't come home for a very long time. I'm going to answer this question too. I think it's I felt bad when I posed the question to you all because it is a tough one to look back and actually think about what would you say that doesn't seem flippant and that's relevant to what we were talking about. I would tell myself, whether I'd listen is another thing, I am still a baby, that you don't know anything. Go ahead, go out, look in the world and go and learn as much as you can. And as Yea Ji said, it doesn't have to be one focus. You can learn loads of things at the same time and be open to that. You don't have to have your set path. And if you do, know that it can be flexible enough to change. And I'm thinking of so many things so many quotes that run in the world to support all of that. But I wholly believe in stages of your life. I had a really fun time in my 20s. I definitely feel like an adult now in my 30s because I'm a parent, which forces you to grow up way faster than you probably want to. It's really important to know that mistakes are going to happen and it's not a detriment to your personality or who you are. And in the same breath, don't take anybody else's criticisms as the gospel of who you are, and take that into your personality too. And that one is still a real struggle. That one's a tough one. I don't know if I have the advice for that, but I will end on a lovely C.S. Lewis quote, which I tell myself all the time, is from Alice in Wonderland. It's, "I give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it." I wish I could figure out the answer to that one because I never do. Literally runs through my head on a daily basis. So that's us. That's us for the Women of Streamline Taking Over Video Games Real Talk. So I'm going to do the wonderful social media shares. So for anybody who enjoyed our chat, wants to hear more about Streamline, wants to hear more about any of us, you can head over to LinkedIn. You'll find us under Streamline Media Group. Yea Ji specifically is also under All Pixels and Day Zero. Otherwise, you can join our Twitter, which is at Streamline News. And obviously, you can subscribe to and hopefully download and share this podcast, which is Video Games Real Talk. So we have been Anais, Rai, Yea Ji, and I'm Layla. And we are the Women of Streamline. And we have taken over and we are finally dropping the mic on Video Games Real Talk. Thank you very much.